So, Dave Chapman, can you give us what's up in December skies? What can we look forward to this coming month?
Okay, I'm screen sharing now. Everybody see my title slide?
We do.
Okay. What's up this month? Of course, this has been out since the 1st, so I don't think much has happened in the few days since it's been up. Um, okay, let's just move along here. One thing I didn't check, I'm going to stop sharing for a second because when I share, I don't know if I remembered to add share sound. Um, Okay. Yeah, I'm sharing sound now. Not that I need it at the moment. So that cover picture that was underneath the title, uh, I'm just pointing out a few things here. That is, a picture of the Winter Milky Way with some asterisms that are can be picked out. So we've got this Winter Milky Way going through Gemini and Canis Minor and Auriga. So I guess the first thing to point out is the Winter Triangle, which is, oops, sorry about that. Um, it consists of Sirius, Betelgeuse, and Procyon, and that's almost a perfect equilateral triangle. And then, of course, there's the Winter Hexagon, which, depending on where you start, Sirius, Rigel, Aldebaran, Capella. I just use Castor and Pollux together, the twins, Procyon and back to Sirius. And you can draw another one called the Winter G, I guess, that actually Judy taught me about. If you go Capella, Castor, Pollux, Procyon, Sirius, Rigel, Aldebaran, Betelgeuse. I haven't got that drawn out, but it makes a letter G in the sky. So the winter Milky Way is perhaps not as glorious as the summer one in Sagittarius and places like that, but there's an awful lot of stars in that part of the sky, and a lot of bright ones too. There's more bright stars in the winter sky than in the summer. I just wanted to say something. Okay, the sun. The sun has been remarkable lately. There's been a few active sunspots, and as usual, these underlined links here will lead you off to other places on the internet, and all of these things are on the PDF version of this presentation, which is on our homepage. So after the meeting today, if you want to go there, you can follow those active links. So December, uh, I guess the first winter month. Between the beginning and end of December, the sky conditions in terms of night and day don't change very much. Sunsets around 4:30, a little after 4:30. Dusk around 6:20, 6:30. About the same amount of darkness at the beginning and end, 11 and a half hours. The dawn starts around 6 in the morning. Sunrise between 6:30 and 7:30 and 7:50. The daylight hours are quite reduced, and the altitude of the sun is quite low. And we have the winter solstice coming up on Tuesday, the 21st of December. And I just thought I'd mention the earliest sunset um, um, coming up December 8th to the 11th. Now, I could talk about why the earliest sunset is not the same as the shortest day, but there really isn't time in my presentation. But that's something you can easily look up online. Now, today, the big news today on the sun was that there was a total solar eclipse in Antarctica, which took place overnight. And I haven't seen many good pictures from that uh, yet. If you want to go online, NASA had a live feed, although the resolution wasn't that great. So I picked out this picture, which was a picture of the total solar eclipse taken from an airplane, which is really cool because you can see the moon's shadow and you can see the areas where the moon's shadow is not. I know that there were a lot of cruise ships down that way, and I heard that many of them were under cloud, so there may be a lot of disappointed eclipse viewers down there. Could explain the lack of photographs. Fred Espenak, who is a handbook contributor and does the eclipse work, poor Fred and his wife got all the way to Buenos Aires and found out that his whole cruise leaving from Buenos Aires was canceled. So he turned around and went back to Arizona. He was one disappointed eclipse chaser. Sad, because that must have been an expensive trip. So it's expensive in any case to go to Antarctica, and then to be on an eclipse cruise. The eclipse was only about a minute long. So Alan Dyer on his site, he figured out that a lot of people cost eclipses by how many $1,000s per minute. And he said that this particular eclipse trip would have been an astronomical price because of the cost of going to Antarctica. So for the moon, the new moon is obviously also today because it's the total eclipse, and we also have moon at perigee, which means that it's the closest to us, and we should be expecting large tides in the next few days. I was wondering, the eclipse was very short, and the moon is at perigee, which means it's about the largest it appears to us. And I was wondering if the moon hadn't have been at perigee, if it would have been a total eclipse at all, because it might not have been big enough to cover the sun otherwise. So another interesting thing is when I was looking for information, I typed in solar eclipse Antarctica December 4th, and it hit the eclipse of 2002. I think that works out, which is 19 years ago. So there was another one Saros cycle ago, an eclipse in Antarctica on this date, but those weren't the pictures I was looking for. So that being the new moon, the thing to watch out for this coming week, December 6th, a couple days from now, in the western sky, the evening sky, you should see a nice arrangement of the crescent moon and Venus. Photo worthy, I would say. The 7th through the 9th, Jupiter will pass, the moon will pass Saturn and Jupiter and make a nice display. December 11th is the first quarter. December the 14th, the moon and Uranus are very close together. And if you want to identify Uranus in your binoculars, that would be a good time to find Uranus, because you could find the moon easily enough, and then I'll show you where Uranus is compared to where the moon is. The December 18th and the evening of the 18th into the 19th is the next full moon, and that will be the full moon of the winter moon or chief moon, Kezigewigus, which literally means winter moon in Mi'kmaq, or Kajikus, which is chief moon or great moon. So this is the one that is highest in the sky of all the full moons of the year and longest in the sky. It's like 16 plus hours in the sky. And when I present with Kathy LeBlanc on Mi'kmaq moons, we always talk about Kajikus being the chief moon because of this astronomical attribute it has of being high and long in the sky. The last quarter is on December 27th, and in the morning of December 31st, just before the next new moon, there'll be a waning crescent moon, Mars and Antares, in the morning sky. That might be a bit of a challenge, but they're all very close together. And interestingly enough, Mars and Antares is always an interesting pair, because the literal meaning of the star name Antares means the rival of Mars because of its reddish color. So there are times when Mars and Antares are in the sky together, and it's always fun to see them both. So as usual, I plug observing the moon, and I encourage beginners especially to pick out the time around the first quarter, plus or minus a few days, because it's the moon is well positioned at first quarter phase in the southern sky at about the time it gets dark. So it's an easy early evening target for the backyard astronomer, and there's a lot of features that you can pick out, and I've circled the ones there in green and red, the lunar seas or mare that are in the Explore the Universe, and the craters at that time that are in Explore the Universe. Of course, you can see and identify much more than that, but these are the ones that are well displayed at around the time of the first quarter. If you could observe the moon 3 nights in a row, first quarter and the day before and the day after, which happens sometimes, you could actually finish about 25% of the Explore the Moon in a telescope program just on those 3 days, because there's so many features in the center of the disk. So the planets, Mercury is mostly too close to the Sun this month, but later in the month it has a conjunction with Venus, and they're within a 5-degree binocular field of each other. I mean, you'll have no trouble finding Venus, and then you should be able to pick out Mercury. You should be able to see it with your naked eye, but in the twilight it may be easier to find Venus first and then look for Mercury. Venus itself is at its greatest illuminated extent yesterday. So it's the brightest it's going to be, minus 4.9. I think many of you may have noticed it on the few clear nights we've had. I mentioned on the 6th there's a conjunction with the moon, and with Mercury again on December the 29th. And it's quickly heading for inferior conjunction with the Sun in early January. So basically Venus has come out from behind the Sun and has kind of gone very far east in the sky and is its greatest illuminated extent. And it's going to be catching up with us on the inner racetrack, as it were, going faster. It'll catch up with us, and then it'll pass, very quickly in front of the Sun. Well, not a transit in front of the Sun, but in the Sun's direction. So that's going to be quickly disappearing from the evening sky, and then it'll pop up in the morning sky. And Mars, well, there's not much observing there. It's about as far away and as dim as it can be, being so close to the Sun, on the other side of the Sun. And it has that grouping with the crescent moon and Antares that I mentioned on December 31st, a bit of a challenge. And it's heading on a long road to opposition 1 year from now, as I wrote. So in late December, I think, we're going to have another opposition. That's a long time to wait. But there's going to be something really interesting that happens on that night that I'll talk to closer to the day. And as I mentioned, Jupiter and Saturn are in the southwestern sky. They're getting kind of low. If you want to do any observing, you need to catch them just as it gets dark, because very soon afterwards they get low, and atmospheric turbulence will interfere with your telescope views. Uranus, as I mentioned, is in the evening sky, and it will be in the binocular field with the moon on the 14th. And Neptune is in the southwest evening sky to the east of Jupiter and Saturn along the ecliptic. It doesn't have any helpful conjunctions with the moon this month, but not hard to find if you use a finder chart. So here are some little pretty pictures that I made. The moon and Venus on the 6th of December. Get out at 5 o'clock because it gets dark early. And then I've got a picture here of the moon passing Saturn and Jupiter a couple of days after that. So you'll have Venus, Saturn, Moon, Jupiter. The day before that it'll be Venus, Moon, Saturn, Jupiter. So If you have a wide field lens, you might be able to pick that up. There on the 14th, that's how to find Uranus in your binoculars, if you can find the moon. And then here's the challenge on the morning of. I think that's wrong. Is that wrong? No, that's right. No, there's something wrong with that date. I'm sorry. That Mars. That's December 31st. Sorry. That's the 31st of December. The Moon, Mars, Antares conjunction. Sorry about that. It's also a challenge because you have to get up early to see that. Here's something worth talking about: is the Geminid meteor showers, the night of the 13th and 14th. You can begin looking earlier than that. It's they have fairly good rates of meteors, long, slow tracks. The evening, the dusk ends really early in the evening, and Gemini actually is one of those. The Geminis are one of those meteor showers where the radiant is actually well up in the sky when it gets dark. So you can get an early start looking for Geminids. Unfortunately, the first quarter moon doesn't set till about 3 in the morning. However, dawn doesn't come till 6, and so if you're an early morning type, you should be able to look at Geminid meteors between 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning if it's a good night. Also, the Ursid meteors, December 21st and 22nd, they're a minor shower, but there are people interested in those. The big news now is Comet Leonard. This is a picture. This is the last picture that I was able to take of Comet Leonard. Gosh, how long ago was that? Anyway, it's not as bright as Neowise, but I've seen some really nice photographs of it. I have not been able to observe it from the city. It's been just too dim and too light polluted. I'm going to try again tomorrow morning, but there's a place I can go which isn't so light polluted. I think it's going to be clear tomorrow, and I'm going to get up and see if I can't observe the comet. The problem, of course, has been the bloody weather has been so cloudy, especially in the mornings. So it's an interesting comet. It's a first pass through the solar system. It's got a parabolic orbit. It's in a retrograde orbit. And today it's a distance of a little under a half of an astronomical unit. And it's working its way through Boötes, Serpens, and Hercules. The closest approach is in about a week. It's going to half the distance. So it might get as bright as magnitude 4. But the problem is it's heading for the horizon. So basically over the next week is your best opportunity to see this comet. But you're going to have to get up early, and you're going to have to find a low eastern horizon with no light pollution. So there's a few challenges there to seeing this comet. Here's a picture. In other places in the world, they have clear skies, and I've seen a lot of pictures of this kind. This is obviously a time-exposed picture, and it went by Messier 3 just the other night, and there's a lot of pictures like this of the globular cluster Messier 3 and the comet. So it gives you some idea how big the comet is if you were thinking about photographing it. It's not as big as Neowise. It's got a decent tail, but not a huge one. So I'm hoping to be able to see it tomorrow, and I think there's 1 or 2 people thinking about trying to take a photograph. Here's a kind of a finder chart. What is it today? The Saturday the 4th. So this is the position of the comet at sort of early morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning on those dates. So I've got tomorrow morning's position there. It's not far from Arcturus. If you're looking for it with binoculars, find Arcturus and kind of head head up and to the left, and if it's to be seen, you'll find it. But you can see it's moving quite quickly, one day at a time. By a week from now, it's going to be quite low in the sky, so you're going to have that good horizon looking east. But it may be getting brighter, so let's hope for good weather. Finishing off with Explore the Universe, the winter constellations are all fairly prominent. Auriga, Gemini, Taurus, Orion, Canis Major, Canis Minor. These are in the winter section of Explore the Universe. You don't necessarily have to observe all of them, but in Explore the Universe you only have to really observe half of each category. And I think out of 24 constellations you have to see 12 or something like that. So anyway, it's easy enough to find these. You can knock off half of your constellation requirements in one evening if you can find a clear one. Again, the stars, the winter stars, are all very bright. I've got them ranked here in brightness. Sirius is the brightest star in the sky, night sky, and then Capella, Rigel, Procyon, Betelgeuse, Aldebaran, Pollux, and all of those there are navigation stars, official navigation stars, and all the ones named here are actually good for SynScan alignment. If you have a SynScan telescope that needs stars to align, they're all, it's worth learning the names of these stars because you can align to them. And I'm not sure, but most, but not all of those stars are also good for the Celestron system, the next star type system. Winter deep sky objects mostly are open clusters, with the exception of the Orion Nebula, all pretty bright. I think Orion Nebula you should be able to find. Even in the city, you should be able to pick that out. And of course, the Pleiades and the Hyades are very close by open clusters. That's why they're so big. Very easy to find and observe in binoculars. And then there's a couple of clusters in Gemini and Auriga. There's way more, but these are the ones that are in Explore the Universe. There's another interesting object called Campbell's Cascade, which is an asterism. A little bit more tricky to find, but it's a Canadian asterism. Father Lucien Campbell observed this, and it was named after him by the Sky and Telescope. Columnist kind of applied that name, Campbell's Cascade. It's a beautiful little string of stars, and culminating in a little open cluster, NGC 1502. So that's a bit of a challenge, but worth going after because of the Canadian connection. Again, these double stars are in both the fall and winter category, although it might be harder and harder to see 16 Cygni. Delta Cepheus is probably the easiest one to go after. Of course, that's well-known variable star as well. And then as Taurus comes up earlier in the sky, Theta 1 Tauri is a nice double star within the Hyades. There's a lot of stars to look at, but with the aid of star chart, you should be able to pick out Theta 1. Oops, I went backwards instead of forwards. So that's my presentation for today. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to field them.
Great. Thanks so much, Dave. Any questions for Dave?
Dave.
Yes.
Greg Dill.
Yeah.
I was interested, Dave, in the stars that you mentioned. Some you indicated are good for SynScan and some for Celestron.
Yeah.
Now, is that part of when you align your telescope? That, do you look for 2 stars or 3 stars?
Yes, that's what I meant. I could have explained that a bit better, but in both systems, they have an opportunity to align the telescope to the sky, and certainly in the SynScan one, you need to know what stars you're choosing. You need to know their names, because when you when you dial it up in the hand control, it uses the names of the stars. So it's good to learn the names of those bright stars. And the Celestron system, which I'm not as I'm not as familiar with, they also have a similar 2 or 3 star alignment process. However, having messed around with a Celestron Next Star recently, I had the opportunity to play with one. Celestron has a very nice system. They call it the Easy Align, which you just point the telescope at any 3 bright objects, and you don't even have to know what they're called, and they could be planets as well. And it takes that information and it cogitates for about 20 seconds. And if you've done it right, it'll align your telescope to the sky, and you don't have to know the names of them. But I always encourage people to learn the names of the stars anyway.
So as long as they're available to scroll through on the hand remote, then you can pick them as long as you know where they are and you pick them right.
Yeah, well,
there's none better
with the proviso that it assumes you have a completely open sky. If you're doing this in limited, if in my backyard, about half of the stars that I could use in principle are not, I can't see with my telescope because of buildings and trees. And so I usually find enough, but it is a challenge from my house. Anyhow, I always encourage people to learn the names of the stars. It just kind of helps in your general knowledge of the sky, and this person will remain nameless. But at one point we were, I was working with somebody out at St. Croix who wanted to take an image of something, and I said, well, there's a really good dark nebula next to Altair. And well, that's cool. Which one's Altair? So it does help to know the sky, and so that you can use the same language to point things out. And
thank you.
And that's the importance of Explore the Universe in terms of it orients people to the sky so that you can go forward and where things are found.
Well, there's also a lot of lore associated with the constellations. And the stars, and I always enjoy that part of it. And there's a lot of people who may not be into the technical side of astronomy who enjoy that part of it. So it's nice to be able to point out a star and say what its name is, and say something about it and the history of it and what's the significance of it and so on. So,
well, thanks so much, Dave.